The sun rose slowly over the busy city, sending its warm light across the streets where people hurried to start their day. Among the crowd, there was a man who stood quietly beside his small cart. His cart was simple, with a few everyday items neatly displayed for sale. He was not a man who drew attention. In fact, most people passed him without a second glance. He wore plain clothes, and his face carried the lines of someone who had worked hard and endured much. To anyone watching, he was just another street seller trying to survive in a world that often seemed to ignore the less fortunate. From the early hours of the morning, he arranged his items carefully, making sure each one looked clean and inviting. Despite his humble position, he took pride in his work. Every item was placed with care, every gesture thoughtful. He greeted passers-by politely, offering a small smile, even when they barely noticed him. It was a quiet determination that set him apart from many others in the market, who seemed frustrated or angry with life. Life on the streets was not easy. The man faced challenges every day, from people who tried to cheat him to those who openly mocked him. Yet he continued, motivated by something that went beyond money. He wanted to see the world for what it truly was, to understand people in their purest form. He wanted to find out who could be kind without expecting anything in return. And he knew that to do this, he had to remain unnoticed, blend into the crowd, and carry the appearance of someone ordinary. People often judged him quickly. A few would sneer, thinking he was uneducated, incapable, or unimportant. Some customers would bargain aggressively, trying to pay less than the price of a simple item, as if they believed he had no choice but to accept it. Others whispered about him behind his back, mocking his appearance or the small business he ran. Every insult stung, but he had learned not to react. He had seen that reacting to humiliation often encouraged more of it, so he held his calm, even when his heart ached. One morning, a group of young men passed by his cart, laughing loudly. They pointed at his items, and then at him, shouting jokes that were meant to embarrass him. Their laughter was cruel, sharp, and meant to make him feel small. He did not respond, though his hands trembled slightly as he arranged his goods. He knew that any reaction would give them the satisfaction they were looking for. So he smiled faintly, nodded politely, and continued his work. As if their words had no effect, despite the humiliation, there were moments that reminded him why he endured this life. A mother would stop with her child and buy a small toy, thanking him for the quality. A student would purchase a notebook and say, "This is just what I needed, thank you." Such gestures were small, yet they carried warmth that money could never buy. They reminded him that goodness existed in people, even if it was rare. He had learned to read people quickly. A person's eyes often told the truth that words did not. He could sense who was genuinely kind, who was pretending, and who would take advantage of him. This skill had been honed over years of experience, observing human nature in its rawest form, and it had taught him patience, resilience, and the value of discretion. While others sought fame or wealth openly, he was searching for honesty and kindness, the rare treasures of life that no amount of money could purchase. The city moved around him like a river of endless motion. Cars honked, vendors shouted, children ran by, chasing small games, and the smell of fresh bread mixed with the scent of exhaust fumes. He navigated the chaos with a quiet presence, almost invisible, but fully aware of every detail. His senses were sharp, and he noticed even the smallest gestures, someone helping another person, a child sharing food, a stranger offering a seat to someone in need. These observations mattered more to him than the coins he earned. One day, a new challenge arose. A local merchant, noticing his small but neat cart, decided to intimidate him. The merchant loudly complained that his goods were too close to the shop, accusing him of stealing customers. The crowd gathered, whispering and watching, expecting the street seller to argue back. But he remained calm, politely explaining that he meant no harm and had every right to sell his items there. The merchant, frustrated by the lack of reaction, eventually stormed off, muttering under his breath. The street seller continued his day, unfazed. To the outside world, it seemed as if he had no power. But he carried a quiet strength that others did not understand. As the sun climbed higher, he thought about his true purpose. He was not here to prove himself to anyone or to make a fortune. His true mission was to observe, to experience, and to learn. Every insult, every act of kindness, every interaction added to his understanding of the human heart. He believed that in time, the lessons he gathered would lead him to the people who were genuinely good, the ones whose hearts were pure and intentions true. By evening, the market began to wind down. The crowd thinned, and the noises softened. The street seller packed up his unsold items carefully, storing them for the next day. His movements were methodical, almost meditative. As he walked home, he reflected on the day's events. Despite the mockery, despite the harsh words, he felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. He had stayed true to himself, treated people with respect, and learned more about the world around him. No one could have guessed his secret. Behind the humble clothes and simple cart was a man who had built a fortune from the ground up, a billionaire who had chosen this path to experience life differently. He was not interested in showing off his wealth or using it to dominate others. Instead, he wanted to see people's true colors, to understand who could offer kindness without expecting anything in return. As night fell, the city lights flickered on, casting a warm glow over the streets. He found a quiet spot to rest for the night, knowing that tomorrow would bring another day of challenges, lessons, and discoveries. The world might laugh at him, mock him, or ignore him, but he had learned the secret of patience and observation. And in his heart, he carried the quiet hope that someday the truth would reveal itself, and those who had shown true kindness would be recognized until then. He remained a street seller to the world, but a seeker of true humanity to himself. Every moment, every interaction was a step on his journey, a journey not measured in wealth or fame, but in understanding, empathy, and the discovery of genuine hearts in a world full of judgment and appearances. The morning air was crisp and full of the usual city sounds, car horns blaring, vendors calling out their prices, and the chatter of people starting their day. The street seller set up his small cart as he had done countless times before. The routine was familiar, comforting in its simplicity. But today, there seemed to be a heavier tension in the air. People passed by with their usual hurried pace, some stopping to glance at his items, others ignoring him completely. He greeted each one politely, offering a smile that rarely received a return. From the very first hour, he noticed how the world could be harsh. A group of teenagers approached, their laughter sharp and mocking. They pointed at his worn clothes and the modest cart. One of them even picked up a small item, examining it as if he intended to find a flaw, and then threw it back on the cart with disdain. "What is this? Who would even buy this?" they jeered. The street seller bowed his head slightly, maintaining his calm demeanor. He did not answer, knowing that any reply might fuel their cruelty. Humiliation had become a part of his daily life. People often assumed he had nothing to offer besides what was on the cart. Some called him names, some laughed, and some sneered with visible disgust. Occasionally, a few would deliberately bump into him, spill a little of his carefully arranged items, and walk away without a word. These moments were painful, yet he endured them quietly, understanding that reacting would not help him. He had learned that patience was a strength, and control over one's emotions was even stronger. A woman walking with her child stopped briefly at his cart. She noticed the careful way he arranged his goods, the neatness that contrasted sharply with the rough surroundings. "Do you have this in another color?" she asked politely. He nodded, smiling, and explained softly that this was the only one he had. She purchased it with a gentle thank you, and he felt a warmth that only moments like this could bring. It was a reminder that not everyone judged by appearances, and that small acts of kindness existed even amidst ridicule as the day progressed. The crowd grew thicker, and with it, the potential for humiliation increased. A man from a nearby shop began shouting, accusing him of stealing customers. "Your cart is too close. You're taking business away from honest shops?" he yelled. People stopped to watch, some whispering to each other, waiting for a confrontation. The street seller calmly replied, "I mean no harm. I am only selling my goods. I respect your business and the space around it." The man, frustrated by the lack of reaction, muttered under his breath and stormed off, leaving a small audience behind. Puzzled by the street seller's composure, the city, in its endless motion, felt like a test of human nature. He observed carefully, noting who was kind, who was selfish, and who pretended to be good. The truth often revealed itself in the smallest gestures: a hand offered to pick up a fallen item, a coin given without complaint, or a simple smile. He treasured these moments, for they were rare and genuine. They reminded him why he chose this life, hiding his wealth and living among ordinary people, to understand humanity in its rawest form. By afternoon, the heat of the day added to his fatigue. Sweat ran down his forehead, and his back ached from standing for hours. Yet he continued arranging his items with care. Each coin he earned was less important than the lessons he observed. People's reactions, their kindness or cruelty, were more valuable than money. Today, a young boy no older than 10 approached his cart timidly. He pointed at a small toy, eyes wide with curiosity. The street seller knelt down to speak with him gently, explaining how it worked. The boy's excitement was genuine, his joy infectious. A small crowd had gathered, smiling at the innocence of the moment. Even in a world full of judgment, pure happiness still existed. However, not all encounters were positive. Later in the day, a group of men approached, visibly annoyed that customers had stopped by the cart. They demanded he move further down the street, using harsh words and threatening gestures. Once again, he remained calm. He explained politely that he had every right to be there, that he caused no harm, and that he was simply trying to make a living. Their frustration grew, and some muttered about reporting him to authorities. The street seller did not argue, knowing that time would reveal the futility of their anger. His patience, practiced over years of enduring disrespect, gave him the strength to withstand these moments. Amidst the chaos, he reflected on why he had chosen this life. Money, power, and luxury were things he had already achieved in another part of his life, hidden from the world. He could live comfortably anywhere, yet he walked the streets daily, exposing himself to ridicule, humiliation, and hardship. His goal was not revenge or validation. It was understanding. He wanted to witness true human behavior, to find the rare souls whose hearts were genuine. Every insult, every act of mockery was a lesson. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, was a treasure. By evening, the market began to calm. People returned home, shops closed, and the once busy streets grew quiet. The street seller packed his cart, taking care to organize items for the next day. Despite the humiliation, despite the moments of anger and ridicule from others, he felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. He had maintained his dignity, treated others with respect, and observed the human heart in action. As he walked home through the dimly lit streets, he considered the lessons of the day. Life was not easy, but it was full of opportunities to learn about people. Some were cruel and selfish, others kind and genuine, and a few were indifferent. The street seller had chosen to live among them not as a victim, but as a silent observer. He had learned to accept that humiliation was sometimes inevitable, but it did not define him. What mattered was how he carried himself, and what he chose to see in others. No one in the city could guess his true identity. Behind the plain clothes and the modest cart was a billionaire who had earned his fortune through hard work, intelligence, and perseverance. He had chosen this disguise to experience life differently, to understand the human spirit without the influence of wealth or status. The lessons he gathered in these streets were more valuable than any sum of money. He was learning the true meaning of kindness, integrity, and patience. Night fell, and the city lights flickered on. He found a quiet corner to rest, reflecting on the day. Despite the harshness, he remained hopeful. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, and perhaps new moments of kindness. He knew that every day on the streets was a step on a journey far more important than wealth or fame. It was a journey of understanding humanity, of discovering the rare individuals who could offer genuine goodness in a world full of judgment and appearances. And so he rested, ready to face another day. Another series of tests and lessons, ever patient, ever observant, and ever hopeful. The morning sun brought a gentle warmth to the city streets, and the street seller began his day with the familiar routine. He pushed his cart into position, arranging his items carefully, making sure each one was neat and inviting. The air was alive with the usual sounds, vendors calling out their prices, children laughing, the faint hum of traffic, but there was a calmness in him that set him apart from the chaos around. He greeted every passerby with a gentle nod or a polite smile, even when most ignored him. This calm presence had become his shield, allowing him to move through the crowd unnoticed, yet fully aware of everything around him as he worked. He noticed a young woman helping an elderly man cross the street. Her actions were quiet and unassuming, but the street seller felt a deep admiration for such kindness. It was small gestures like this that reminded him why he had chosen this path, to observe the real hearts of people, untainted by status, wealth, or expectation. He watched her for a moment, then returned to arranging his goods, feeling a sense of quiet hope that humanity was not entirely lost. By mid-morning, the familiar mockery began. A group of men passing by started pointing at his cart and laughing, making cruel jokes about his clothes and the simplicity of his items. One of them deliberately dropped a few coins on the ground and then scoffed at his modest earnings. The street seller did not react. He had long learned that responding would only give them satisfaction. Instead, he calmly picked up the coins, rearranged his items, and continued to smile politely. He had discovered that patience and composure were far more powerful than anger or argument. Among the crowd, however, there were moments of genuine connection. A small child approached the cart, eyes wide with curiosity, pointing at a simple toy. The street seller knelt to show how it worked, explaining gently and encouraging the child's questions. The joy on the child's face was immediate and infectious. The mother, standing nearby, thanked him warmly, and he felt a flicker of happiness. These brief encounters were the rewards for his patience, reminders that kindness and innocence still existed in a world often clouded by greed and judgment. The afternoon brought a new challenge. A vendor from a nearby shop confronted him angrily, accusing him of taking customers and demanding that he move his cart further down the street. The street seller listened quietly, nodding politely. "I mean no harm," he said softly. "I am only trying to earn my living and respect your space." The man's anger grew, but the street seller's calmness never wavered. Eventually, frustrated by the lack of confrontation, the man stormed off, leaving a few onlookers murmuring about the unusual patience of the street seller. It was a small victory, though invisible to most, a quiet proof that composure could withstand aggression. As the sun reached its peak, he reflected on his purpose. Most people could not understand why he chose this life, why he endured daily humiliation despite his wealth elsewhere. The answer was simple to him. He wanted to experience humanity as it truly was, without the influence of status or money. Every insult, every mocking gesture, every act of cruelty was a lesson in human behavior. Every smile, every small act of kindness was a treasure. His life on the streets was a careful observation of the human heart, an education no university could offer. Later, a kind young man approached the cart. Noticing the neat arrangement and the care with which the street seller treated every customer, he asked questions politely and purchased a few items, thanking the street seller for his help. The simple gratitude felt genuine, and the street seller felt a deep sense of appreciation for the man's kindness. Such moments reinforced his belief that goodness could exist in unexpected places, that despite mockery and insult, people with pure hearts could still be found. The day wore on, and the city grew busier as people rushed to complete errands before evening. The street seller remained focused, observing the interactions around him. A child dropped a coin on the ground, and without hesitation, another passerby picked it up and returned it to the child. Small acts of honesty like this caught his attention, reinforcing the lessons he sought. He realized that the world was a mixture of cruelty and kindness, and that understanding it required patience, observation, and empathy. In the late afternoon, a particularly difficult encounter occurred. A group of men, irritated by the attention his cart received, began shouting and gesturing aggressively. They demanded that he move immediately, using harsh language and intimidation. The street seller remained calm, explaining politely that he had the right to be there and that he caused no harm. Their frustration grew, but he did not flinch. His years of experience had taught him that power lay in patience, not in anger or confrontation. Eventually they left, their attempt to intimidate him failing completely. As evening approached, the market began to quiet down. The crowds thinned, shops began to close, and the city's energy shifted. The street seller packed his cart carefully, preparing for the next day. Despite the challenges and humiliations he faced, he felt a sense of quiet fulfillment. He had maintained his dignity, treated others with respect, and observed the world as it truly was. Every insult endured, and every act of kindness witnessed added to his understanding of human nature. Walking home through the quiet streets, he reflected on the day. Some people had been cruel, others kind, and some indifferent. Each had revealed their true selves, and he had learned valuable lessons from every interaction. His choice to live among ordinary people had allowed him to see the world from a perspective few ever experienced. He understood that humiliation did not define a person. It was the response to it that mattered. His patience, his kindness, and his observant nature were his strengths. No one on the streets knew his secret. Behind the humble clothes and modest cart was a billionaire, a man who had chosen to live simply to understand the human heart. His wealth could have shielded him from insult and hardship, but he valued knowledge of humanity more than comfort or recognition. Each day was a step on a journey to discover honesty, integrity, and kindness in a world often clouded by judgment and appearances. Night fell, casting a gentle glow over the city. The street seller found a quiet place to rest, reflecting on the lessons of the day. He had faced humiliation, observed the full spectrum of human behavior, and discovered moments of genuine goodness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, and new opportunities to witness kindness and cruelty alike. He felt patient and hopeful, knowing that every experience on the streets brought him closer to understanding the rare and genuine hearts he sought. And so he rested, ready to continue his journey, ever observant, ever patient, and ever hopeful for the truth of human nature. The sun rose slowly over the city, casting a warm golden light over the streets where people hurried to start their day. The street seller, as always, positioned his small cart in the same spot he had claimed years ago. He carefully arranged his items, making sure everything looked neat and inviting. His appearance remained simple, his clothes modest, and his face calm and patient, despite the challenges he faced daily. He greeted each passerby politely, offering a gentle smile, even when most did not notice him. Today felt different, though, as if the city itself held its breath. Waiting for something to happen, by mid-morning, a crowd had formed near his cart. He noticed the familiar mix of people, some kind, some indifferent, and some critical. As he sold his items, a wealthy-looking man approached and observed quietly from a distance. Unlike others, he did not mock or rush, he merely watched, seeming curious about the street seller. The street seller continued to work calmly, aware of the attention but not distracted by it. His eyes, trained to read human behavior, observed every expression, every movement, and every subtle gesture. Suddenly an incident occurred that would change the course of the day. A group of people began mocking the street seller loudly, pointing at his cart and making cruel jokes about his modest possessions. They laughed at his appearance, at the simplicity of his goods, and at the patience he showed. One of them even knocked over a small stack of items, laughing as they fell to the ground. The street seller did not react. He bent down quietly, rearranged the items, and smiled faintly. His calmness was a stark contrast to the chaos around him, and it caught the attention of the wealthy man who had been observing. After the commotion, the wealthy man approached the street seller. "You have remarkable patience," he said, his voice quiet but filled with genuine admiration. The street seller nodded politely, acknowledging the compliment without revealing too much about himself. He had learned long ago that revealing his identity too soon could change the way people behaved, making it impossible to observe their true nature. The wealthy man introduced himself simply, without showing any signs of status or wealth, and began to engage in conversation about the items on the cart, the life of a street seller, and the challenges he faced daily as they talked. The street seller noticed something different in the wealthy man's behavior. He was kind, sincere, and genuinely interested, not just in the items for sale, but in the person standing before him. This was rare. Most people treated him with judgment or disdain, seeing only what was on the surface. Here was someone who looked beyond appearances, someone whose actions matched his words. The street seller felt a quiet sense of relief, a confirmation that there were still people in the world whose hearts were genuine. The wealthy man continued to return throughout the day, buying small items, engaging in polite conversation, and observing quietly. The street seller noted how he treated everyone else with respect, regardless of their social standing. He noticed the man's patience with children, his kindness toward those who struggled, and his quiet generosity. The street seller felt a sense of connection he had rarely experienced, realizing that trust and understanding could still exist even in a world often clouded by judgment and prejudice. By afternoon, a situation arose that would test both of them. A group of men, irritated by the attention the street seller was receiving, began shouting aggressively. They demanded that he move his cart, using harsh words and threatening gestures. The street seller remained calm, explaining politely that he had every right to be there and that he meant no harm. The wealthy man stepped forward quietly, his presence alone creating a pause in the crowd. He spoke calmly, using words of reason and respect, diffusing the tension without confrontation. The street seller watched, impressed by the man's composure and strength, realizing that true power did not come from wealth or dominance, but from patience, kindness, and the ability to act with integrity. After the crowd dispersed, the street seller and the wealthy man shared a quiet moment. They spoke about life, human nature, and the lessons learned from observing people in their everyday lives. The street seller began to feel a sense of trust he rarely extended to anyone. He realized that this man, unlike the others who mocked or judged him, could be trusted to see beyond appearances and value the truth of character. As evening approached, the street grew quieter. The street seller packed his items with care, preparing for the next day. The wealthy man lingered for a moment, offering a polite goodbye and a genuine expression of gratitude for the insights and lessons shared throughout the day. The street seller watched him leave, feeling a sense of hope and affirmation. Not all people were driven by greed, judgment, or cruelty. Some, like this man, carried sincerity and kindness that transcended social status and appearance. Walking home through the dimly lit streets, the street seller reflected on the day's events. The humiliation he faced daily still existed, and the challenges were far from over. But today, he had witnessed genuine kindness and integrity. Today, he had met someone whose heart was untainted, someone who acted with sincerity and respect. It reminded him why he had chosen this life, to experience humanity in its rawest form, to see the true nature of people without the distortions of wealth or status. He thought about the lessons learned: patience in the face of mockery, calmness during confrontation, the importance of observing human nature carefully, and the rare beauty of encountering genuine kindness. Each interaction added to his understanding. Each observation brought him closer to the truths he sought. His life on the streets was not about the money earned from small sales. It was about the insights gained from every human encounter. No one could have guessed his true identity. Behind the modest clothing and simple cart was a billionaire who had chosen to live among ordinary people to understand their hearts and behavior. His wealth could have given him comfort, safety, and distance from humiliation. But he valued knowledge of humanity more than luxury or recognition. Each day on the streets was a step closer to discovering honesty, kindness, and integrity in a world often clouded by superficial judgments. Night fell, and the city lights illuminated the streets with a warm glow. The street seller found a quiet corner to rest, reflecting on the events of the day. He had faced humiliation, observed human nature in all its forms, and witnessed moments of genuine kindness. He felt patient and hopeful, knowing that each day brought new opportunities to learn, to observe, and to understand the rare and authentic hearts of people. And so he rested, ready to continue his journey, aware that the lessons of today would guide him through the challenges and discoveries of tomorrow. Ever patient, ever observant, and ever hopeful for the truth of human nature. The morning started quietly in the city. With soft sunlight spilling over the streets and vendors setting up their stalls, the street seller moved his cart into position, arranging his simple items with care. He greeted each passerby with a warm smile, even when most ignored him. Today, however, he felt a sense of anticipation, as if something significant was about to unfold. Though the streets were familiar and the routine known, there was a subtle change in the air, a feeling that the lessons of his journey were coming to a turning point. As the day progressed, the usual mix of people passed by his cart. Some sneered, some bargained aggressively, and some offered kind words and gestures. The street seller observed all of them quietly, noticing the small details that revealed their true nature. A young woman stopped to buy a small item, and the child she was with smiled brightly, their innocence shining through. The street seller knelt to help, showing genuine care and patience, and felt the warmth of human connection that he sought so desperately. Mid-morning brought the usual group of men who mocked and jeered at him. They laughed at his modest cart and simple appearance, trying to provoke a reaction. The street seller remained calm, adjusting his items without a word. He knew that any sign of anger or frustration would only feed their amusement. His patience and composure had become his greatest strengths, allowing him to withstand humiliation without losing his dignity. Amid the chaos, a familiar figure appeared, the wealthy man who had shown kindness and understanding in previous encounters. He approached quietly, his presence calm and reassuring. He observed the street seller's interactions with others, noting the same patience, dignity, and care that had impressed him before. Without words, the wealthy man conveyed respect and admiration, and the street seller felt a quiet sense of connection and understanding as the day moved on. A new incident occurred that tested both of them. A group of aggressive vendors, irritated by the attention the street seller received, began shouting and gesturing aggressively. They demanded he move his cart, using harsh words and threats. The street seller remained calm, speaking politely and explaining that he had the right to be there and meant no harm. The wealthy man stepped forward, his demeanor composed and firm, diffusing the tension without confrontation. Together, their calmness and integrity overcame hostility, proving that strength lay in patience, kindness, and reason. Not in anger or intimidation, the afternoon brought a moment that would change everything. A child, wandering away from their parent, accidentally dropped a small item near the street seller's cart. The child's distress drew the attention of everyone around. Without hesitation, the street seller picked up the item and returned it with care and a gentle smile. The parent, observing this act, approached with gratitude and a mixture of surprise and respect. In that moment, the street seller's true nature shone through, not wealth, not status, but the simple, genuine act of kindness. Those who had mocked him before paused, realizing that appearances could be deceiving. The wealthy man, witnessing this, approached the street seller and finally spoke openly about his observations. He praised the patience, empathy, and integrity he had seen, noting that these qualities were rare in a world where people often acted out of selfishness or prejudice. The street seller listened quietly, acknowledging the words without revealing the secret he had kept for so long. He understood that true recognition came not from applause, but from the acknowledgement of one who truly saw him. Evening arrived, and the streets grew quieter. The market began to close, and the city settled into a calmer rhythm. The street seller began packing his items, organizing them carefully for the next day. His mind reflected on the events of the day, the lessons learned, and the rare moments of genuine kindness witnessed. He understood that while cruelty and mockery existed, so did sincerity, generosity, and honesty. The contrast between the two taught him more about the human heart than any wealth or luxury ever could. As night fell, the street seller walked through dimly lit streets reflecting on his journey. He had faced humiliation, observed the full spectrum of human behavior, and witnessed acts of true kindness. He felt patient and hopeful, knowing that each day brought new opportunities to learn, to observe, and to understand the genuine hearts among the many. The secret of his identity remained hidden, but his purpose was fulfilled. He had seen what mattered most, the rare souls whose actions and words reflected honesty and compassion. The city lights flickered, casting soft glows on the streets as he found a quiet place to rest. In his mind, he replayed the lessons of patience, humility, and understanding he had learned through his daily experiences. Each interaction, each small act, each observation had contributed to a deeper understanding of humanity. He realized that wealth and power were insignificant compared to the knowledge gained from observing real people in their natural state. The street seller had found the truth. He sought the value of genuine character, the beauty of small acts of kindness, and the strength found in patience and integrity. As he closed his eyes to rest, he reflected on the journey he had taken. From the first day he chose this path to now, he had seen mockery and cruelty, but also compassion, respect, and honesty. He had witnessed the impact of simple gestures, the ripple effect of empathy, and the rare but profound recognition of true character. He understood that these lessons were the most valuable treasure of all. The street seller's journey was not just about observing others. It was about embodying the values he sought in the world. Each day, he practiced patience, kindness, and composure. Each encounter reinforced the importance of integrity and the subtle power of good behavior. He had learned that the measure of a person was not in wealth or appearance, but in how they treated others and how they responded to challenges. In the quiet of the night, the street seller smiled softly. The journey would continue, but he had reached a moment of fulfillment. He had seen and experienced the lessons he set out to learn, and he had met individuals who embodied the qualities he valued most. The city, with all its noise, chaos, and complexity, had revealed its truths to him. He rested, content in the knowledge that the pursuit of understanding humanity was a journey worth every challenge. Every moment of humiliation and every small act of kindness witnessed it, and so the street seller, humble in appearance but rich in experience and wisdom, closed his eyes for the night. He carried within him the knowledge of the human heart, the lessons of patience and integrity, and the rare joy of witnessing genuine kindness. Tomorrow would bring another day, more lessons, and new discoveries. But tonight, he rested, fulfilled, and ever hopeful, knowing that the journey of understanding, empathy, and human connection was a treasure far greater than any fortune could ever offer. The city woke slowly, its streets coming alive with the hum of everyday life. The street seller pushed his cart into position, arranging his simple items with care. He had become a quiet presence in the market. Known to some as the patient man with a calm demeanor, yet largely overlooked by most. As he greeted passersby with a polite nod, he felt the same familiar anticipation he had learned to recognize, the sense that today might bring something extraordinary. It was not wealth he sought, nor recognition, but the subtle revelations of human nature that his unique life provided. Morning passed with the usual rhythm of activity. Shoppers hurried past, vendors called out their wares, and children ran and played. The street seller noticed everything, his sharp eyes catching the smallest details. A young boy sharing his snack, an elderly woman giving her seat to someone in need, a stranger helping a child who had dropped a coin. These seemingly insignificant acts carried immense meaning to him. They represented the kindness and integrity that he valued above all else, the rare qualities that often went unnoticed in the bustling chaos of the city as he worked. A group of people approached, their expressions filled with curiosity and judgment. They laughed at his modest cart, making jokes about the simplicity of his items and his unassuming appearance. He had grown used to such behavior over the years, responding only with calm composure and polite gestures. This patience was not born of weakness, but of experience and self-discipline. He knew that reactions born of anger or frustration often escalated conflicts and never revealed the true character of others. Among the crowd, a young woman paused to examine his items. She asked polite questions and seemed genuinely interested in what he offered. The street seller knelt to show her how a small item worked, demonstrating care and attention. Her curiosity and sincerity were refreshing amidst the mockery he faced, and he felt a quiet satisfaction in the interaction. This was the reward he sought, human connection that was genuine, untainted by pretense or judgment. Later in the morning, A confrontation arose with a local vendor who felt threatened by the street seller's presence. The man shouted, demanding that he move his cart and accusing him of taking customers. The street seller listened calmly, acknowledging the complaint politely, explaining that he meant no harm and only wished to earn his living. The confrontation escalated for a brief moment, drawing attention from the crowd, but the street seller's composed demeanor and gentle words diffused the tension. The vendor eventually left, frustrated by the lack of reaction, and the street seller continued his work. Unshaken midday brought a series of small acts that left a lasting impression. A child dropped a small coin, and a passerby picked it up and returned it without expectation or comment. A woman helped another shopper who had tripped, steadying her with care and concern. These simple gestures were not grand or dramatic, yet they spoke volumes about the human spirit. The street seller observed each one attentively, noting that true goodness often revealed itself in ordinary, everyday moments. By the afternoon, the streets were busier and the usual mockery returned. A group of young men jeered at his cart, making cruel jokes and attempting to provoke a reaction. The street seller remained calm, adjusting his items with deliberate care. He had learned that responding to cruelty only gave it power. Instead, he focused on the small moments of kindness around him, drawing strength from the evidence that humanity still possessed compassion, honesty, and empathy. During this time, a familiar figure appeared, the wealthy man who had shown him respect and understanding on previous occasions. He approached quietly, observing the street seller's interactions with others. The wealthy man's calm presence seemed to influence the crowd, reducing tension and encouraging kindness. He purchased a few items, engaging in conversation with genuine interest and respect. The street seller felt a sense of connection that was rare and deeply valued. Here was someone who saw beyond appearances, who treated others with integrity and consideration. As the afternoon wore on, another challenge emerged. A group of aggressive vendors began shouting, demanding that the street seller move his cart. Their voices were loud, their gestures intimidating. The street seller remained composed, speaking politely and clearly about his right to earn a living. The wealthy man stepped forward, his calm demeanor providing support and diffusing the tension. Together, their combined patience and integrity prevented conflict, demonstrating that strength and influence could come from composure, respect, and reason rather than aggression or intimidation. Evening approached, and the market began to quiet. The street seller packed his items carefully, preparing for the next day. He reflected on the lessons of the day, patience in the face of mockery, calmness in confrontation, and the importance of observing human nature with a discerning eye. The day had revealed both cruelty and kindness, showing him once again that the human heart was complex, capable of great generosity and compassion, even amidst harshness and judgment. As night fell, he walked home through the quiet streets, the city lights casting a warm glow. He thought about the people he had observed, the child sharing a snack, the passerby returning a coin, the woman helping a stranger, and the wealthy man who treated everyone with respect. These moments reinforced the values he cherished and reminded him that true understanding of humanity came not from wealth or status, but from observing, experiencing, and appreciating the subtleties of human behavior. He reflected on his unique life. A billionaire in disguise, choosing humility and observation over comfort and recognition. His wealth could have shielded him from hardship, but he valued the knowledge and insight gained from living among ordinary people. Every interaction, whether kind or cruel, was a lesson. Every small act of integrity, honesty, or generosity was a treasure. The street seller had learned that human character could not be measured by appearance, wealth, or power, but by actions and the treatment of others. Night deepened, and the streets grew silent. The street seller found a quiet place to rest, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. The day had offered new lessons, moments of connection, and confirmations of the values he had sought to witness. He had seen patience rewarded, kindness recognized, and integrity upheld. These experiences were the treasures he carried, more valuable than any fortune or luxury could provide. As he closed his eyes, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The years of observation, endurance, and quiet patience had revealed the true nature of humanity, the balance between cruelty and kindness, judgment and understanding, indifference and empathy. He understood that his purpose was not to change the world, but to understand it, to witness it, and to embody the values he admired. His life on the streets, humble and unnoticed by most, was a journey of discovery, revealing the rare and beautiful truths of the human heart. The street seller slept with a sense of peace, knowing that each day was an opportunity to learn, observe, and connect with genuine human hearts. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, new challenges, and new moments of kindness, and he would meet them with the same patience, humility, and awareness that had guided him thus far. In a world full of appearances and judgment, he had found the truth, that character, integrity, and kindness were the real treasures worth seeking, and that even the smallest acts of goodness could illuminate the human spirit,